A smaller nation once defeated a global superpower by targeting its weaknesses instead of its strength. That same strategy is now being used again, but this time in a much more complex and global conflict. On one side, you have overwhelming military power with advanced technology and global reach. On the other, a nation under heavy sanctions, forced to fight in a completely different way. And the surprising part is, the weaker side may not need to win to succeed. In modern conflict, victory is not always about domination, it is often about survival and endurance. A defending nation can succeed simply by avoiding collapse or regime change. This creates a different kind of battlefield where time becomes the most important weapon. The longer the conflict lasts, the more pressure builds on the stronger side. And that pressure spreads beyond the battlefield into politics and economics. This approach is known as asymmetrical warfare, where the weaker side changes the rules entirely. Instead of fighting head-on, they expand the conflict into areas the opponent cannot easily control. This is called horizontal escalation, and it focuses on spreading risk across multiple regions. By doing this, they force their opponent to fight on many fronts at once. And that stretches resources, attention, and public support over time. One of the most critical points in this strategy is control over key global choke points. A narrow waterway can suddenly become one of the most important battlegrounds in the world. Through this route, a large portion of global energy supply moves every single day. Any disruption here immediately affects economies far beyond the region. And even small disruptions can cause massive ripple effects globally. By targeting this area, the weaker side can influence global markets without direct confrontation. Oil shipments slow down, prices rise, and uncertainty spreads across industries. This creates pressure not just on governments but on everyday people. And that pressure builds political consequences over time. The goal is not immediate victory but long-term strain. Another key part of this strategy is expanding the conflict beyond one country. Instead of keeping the fight contained, it spreads into surrounding regions. This forces neutral or indirect players into uncomfortable positions. Countries hosting military bases suddenly become part of the equation. And that increases the cost of staying involved in the conflict. Attacks on infrastructure and logistics create disruption without direct large-scale battles. Air travel, energy systems, and trade routes all become vulnerable targets. This creates instability that extends far beyond the original conflict zone. And it forces decision-makers to reconsider their level of involvement. Over time, this weakens alliances and complicates strategies. A third major element of this approach is the use of low-cost, high-volume tactics. Instead of relying on expensive traditional forces, smaller tools are deployed in large numbers. These tools are cheap to produce but expensive to defend against. This creates an imbalance where defense becomes far more costly than attack. And over time, that drains resources from even the strongest military powers. Each interception costs significantly more than the threat it is stopping. This means the defending side is constantly spending more than the attacking side. Over time, this creates financial and logistical strain. And it reduces the ability to sustain long-term operations. That is exactly the outcome the weaker side is aiming for. This strategy does not require dominance, only persistence and patience. The goal is to outlast rather than overpower. Every day the conflict continues, the cost increases for the stronger side. And those costs are not just financial, they are political and social as well. Public support becomes harder to maintain as time goes on. The longer the conflict stretches, the more global consequences begin to appear. Energy markets shift, alliances strain, and priorities change. Even unrelated regions begin to feel the effects of the conflict. This creates a web of pressure that is difficult to control. And it forces strategic decisions under uncertainty. At the same time, expectations of a quick victory begin to fade. What was expected to be fast becomes prolonged and unpredictable. And that changes how both sides approach the situation. The stronger side must adapt to a conflict that does not follow traditional rules, while the weaker side continues to exploit those differences. This creates a situation where strength alone is no longer enough to guarantee success. Strategy, patience, and adaptability become far more important. And that is where asymmetrical warfare proves most effective. It shifts the focus from power to pressure. And from winning quickly to enduring longer. The real question is not who is stronger, but who can sustain the conflict longer. Because endurance becomes the deciding factor in this type of war. And endurance is influenced by economics, politics, and public opinion. These factors are harder to control than military strength alone. And they often determine the outcome. This is why conflicts like this rarely have clear or immediate resolutions. They evolve over time, shaped by changing conditions and responses. Each move creates new challenges and unexpected consequences. And the situation becomes more complex as it continues. That complexity makes prediction difficult. What is clear is that this strategy is designed to create pressure over time. Not through overwhelming force but through persistent disruption. It targets systems, economies, and stability rather than just military assets. And that makes it both effective and unpredictable. The outcome will depend on who can endure the pressure the longest.